What is happening all? Good morning. Welcome in. It's good to see you. Glad that you're joining us for a Sunday Bible study. We will be in 2 Kings, the 15th chapter. Momentarily, 2 Kings 15. And as you're getting there, I want to put before you a sentiment you've heard many times. Thankfully, not in our country. Let's keep it that way. We don't like dictatorships, do we? Not in America. No way, no how. No, we like our representative republic. It is stupendous. But we hear this a lot in movies, especially when you go back in medieval times. You'll hear, "Long live the king." And there's another sentiment that we hear also. Be careful what you ask for, because you might get that. We're going to have somebody today reigning as king with some tremendous longevity. We're going to pick up where we left off in the very first verse of 2 Kings 15. What a beautiful day we have to celebrate, to honor God, and to find out more what He wants out of us. So we open up our Bibles to do that in verse 1 of 2 Kings 15. We're told in the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah, the son of Amaziah, king of Judah, became king. Okay, so we have a guy by the name of Azariah, and remember his daddy, which we're told right here, very close in name, Amaziah. And I appreciate the alphabetizing here because that helps me to keep them separate. So M comes before Z. Therefore, Amaziah is daddy and Azariah is son. I might have mentioned this to you last week. I might not have also. But another name for this guy is Uzziah. Uzziah. And you'll see that more in the parallel account over in 2 Chronicles, from which we'll read in just a moment. Easy to remember also, because Azariah, Uzziah, Z's not common in the name. That's the same person. So if that helps you, it's something that helps me. We find out that Azariah is going to assume the throne not in the north. We're switching back over to the south for some discussion there. So he's the king of Judah now, the son of Amaziah. And this takes place in the 27th year of Jeroboam, who's the king of Israel. That's the king, of course, in the north. And this is Jeroboam II. Same name, but no relation to the first guy. The dynasties in the north are constantly switching hands. Not the case in the south. The southern kingdom is the territory of God's people, those who at least do try to remain true to Him. And the dynasty is always the same. Whose is it? David. It's always the dynasty of David. Rehoboam, who is the son of Solomon, and it just continues in the hands of David's people. Okay, so if you'll go backward just for a second here in chapter 14, and then we'll get the wheels turning moving forward. Chapter 14, just a reminder of King Jeroboam, who's still reigning, Jeroboam II in the north. In the 15th year of Amaziah, this is verse 23 if I didn't mention that, chapter 14, verse 23. In the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, that's Jeroboam II, the son of Joash, king of Israel, became king in Samaria, and he reigned for 41 years. Okay, going back to where we are, chapter 15, verse 1, in the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel. Pause. So Jeroboam II has approximately how many years left of his reign? See how closely we were paying attention to numerical detail. Numbers excite me, Justin. Do they you? I'm sorry, what? 14. Very good. Look at you. Yes. So roughly 14 years that neighborhood are going to be left. I say the neighborhood because a lot of times in subtracting the difference, we don't count the first one, which would be 15. But depending on when it happens in the year, about 14, maybe 15 years are going to be left of Jeroboam when Azariah or Uzziah assumes the throne. Time frame-wise, we're looking at 767 BC. 767 BC. As I tell you, that might be a year, probably not two, but maybe about a year leeway there, but 767 BC. We're making progress, guys. We started at about 4000 BC together many years ago, and we are at 767 BC. We made a lot of New Testament progress, too. We're about to get through all the New Testament books and letters and putting a dent in the Old Testament. So, verse number 2 of chapter 15. He was 16 years old when he became king. Now that's ideal for a ruler, isn't it? Because when you get your driver's license, you know everything. You figured out the world. You know mom and dad are wrong about everything. All your teachers were always wrong. All the old people are old people. They're fuddy-duddies, and you don't need anything or anyone but your infinite wisdom. So this guy is prepared at 16 years old to take the reins of the kingdom. No doubt about that. He reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. What is it we hear in the movies so often? Long live the king. You also hear, be careful what you ask for. Can you imagine? I don't care, what you think of the ruler. Can you imagine having the same ruler for 52 years? I mean, that's like a United States Senator reign, isn't it, right there, isn't it? They stay around for quite a while. Well, 52 years he reigns in Jerusalem. Starts when he's 62, so that means he's going to pass away roughly, of course, 68 years old. His mother's name was Jecoliah of Jerusalem. What I'd like to do right here, and by the way, time frame wise, we're looking at 790 to 739 BC as far as his reign goes. 790 to 739 BC. If you're wondering, hang on a second, that doesn't match up at all with what you said a minute ago in 760. How does he start in 767? But now you're saying he starts in 790. Okay, there's a lot of history behind all of these, and there's so many overlaps, don't forget, of co-regencies. And a lot of times when the Bible mentions that they take over in this year of such and such a king, that's when their sovereignty and rule takes over. But their co-regency will predate that. And here in just a little bit, I'm going to show you a chart, not of all these guys up front, and that's why I'm not showing it right now, but some of the later kings, and I'll put that up, and I think it'll help to visualize it a lot more. But let me tell you, if not for you, for me, it is super confusing, the timeline. I don't get overworked up, I'd say, by the timeline, but I like numbers, so I like to look at it and as well keep a general, but I'll find that constantly. Wait a minute, that doesn't match up with this, and then you go back and you check out the co-regency, and it always makes sense and always washes out. But I'll show that here in a little bit. Again, just for now, he takes over, it appears, as a sovereign in 767, but his co-regency would start back in 790 and go through his full reign of 739. So let's keep our spot right there, and if you want, please turn to 2 Chronicles 26, and if you'll keep some type of bookmark there, we'll go back to this a few times this morning, not that necessarily that exact chapter, but in that general range anyway. 2 Kings 26, as often is the case, there's a little more detail about King Uzziah's reign. I'm sorry, Chronicles. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please go to where I mean, not what I say. That'll help a lot, Justin. You should know that by now. Come on. Wake up, Justin. 2 Chronicles 26, verse 2. He built Elath and restored it to Judah after the king slept with his fathers. And this is talking about, again, you'll find here King Uzziah, same person as Azariah. Z is not common. So that's referring to the same person, is a good way of remembering that. We're going to look at the map, and we'll see that Elath is way down here to the south. Of course, we have the Mediterranean, called the Great Sea, because it's great. It's big in size. You remember the Euphrates, called the Great River, because that's the dominant river of that region. Tremendous volume found in it. And then if you look right down here, you have the Sinai Peninsula that juts out. I'm talking about right here, the Sinai Peninsula that juts down, and that's the Red Sea. You have the Gulf of Suez arm on the west end, the Gulf of Aqaba, and an easy way for me to remember the Gulf of Suez, the Suez Canal, that later would be constructed and is going to connect the Red Sea into the Mediterranean Sea, so people don't have to ships all the way down to the dangerous cape at the bottom of the continent. Anyway, so you have this right here. Well, on this Gulf of Aqaba side, Elath, that's where that place is found. So we're told that Uzziah built Elath way down, the expansion of the kingdom, taking over some of that land that's been surrendered through the years, and restored it to Judah after the king slept with his fathers. Look down in verse 5. he set himself to seek God in the days of Zechariah. That's not the priest who was already slain yesteryears. Maybe the same family, though. Very possible. Could be named after him. So there's this other guy, probably a priest in the days of Zechariah, or prophet. He set himself to seek God all the days of this gentleman, who instructed him in the fear of God. And as long as he sought the Lord, God made him to prosper. He went out and made war against the Philistines and broke through the wall of Gath. Well, strangely enough, that's not on our map, a principal city of Philistia, but you see the little slice of Philistia over there on the southeastern seaboard of the Mediterranean Sea. It's that area anyway, and you'll see these other names found there, the wall of Jabneh and the wall of Ashdod. And he built cities in the territory of Ashdod and elsewhere among the Philistines. So this guy has some military prowess for sure. God helped him against the Philistines and against the Arabians who lived in Gur-Baal, probably more like Gur-Baal, and against the Munites. These are going to be people found, you see Gur-Baal on the map, that's the southern reaches of Judah. When he mentions the Arabians, okay, so you have the Sinai Peninsula right there, and then you're going to have the much larger, not drawn to scale with the laser beam, but down over here you're going to have the Arabian Peninsula, probably familiar with that, modern day Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, and some of those, or Oman, and some of those different places. The oil power players today. The Ammonites paid tribute to Uzziah. You'll see that on the map. You have the Moabites on the east side of the Jordan River Valley. They're more in line with the Dead Sea, the Moabites, but the Ammonites are found right above them. The Ammonites paid tribute to Uzziah, and his fame spread even to the border of Egypt, so way down south and also west. For he became very strong. Moreover, Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem, at the corner gate, and at the valley gate, and at the angle, and fortified them. He built towers in the wilderness and cut out many cisterns, for he had large herds, both in the Shephelah, the ESV reads you might have in your translation, the lowlands, as opposed to the plain, more like plateau area. And he had farmers and vine dressers in the hills and in the fertile lands, we're told, for he loved the soil. It's a man of the land. He's a farmer, it appears, at heart. Moreover, Uzziah had an army of soldiers fit for war, in divisions according to the numbers in the muster made by Jael, the secretary, and Maaseiah, the officer, under the direction of Hananiah, one of the king's commanders. The whole number of the heads of fathers' houses of mighty men of valor was 2,600. Under their command was an army of 307,500 who could make war with mighty power and to help the king against the enemy. And Uzziah prepared for all the army shields, spears, helmets, coats of mail, bows, and stones for slinging. In Jerusalem, he's an innovator. He made engines invented by skillful men to be on the towers and the corners, to shoot arrows and great stones. And his fame spread far, for he was marvelously helped till he was strong. Someone helps him and empowers him to have all this military success, to expand the borders of Israel's kingdom, to boom the economy. What kind of help do you think is working behind this guy? Well, I think we might have read it a time or two here. The power of the Almighty, the one who controls the powers of the world, the one who controls the economy, is working with him. So that's the big help that's found with Uzziah. Okay, so I just wanted to read that because we don't have all that information in the king's account, but that helps us to get a little better idea, some context for verse number 3 in our passage, 2 Kings 15. And he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. So this guy listens to God, he follows God, he has respect for God, and guess what? God blesses him in his reign over the territory of God's people, and he blesses the people in the country as a result. When the righteous are empowered, the godly smile. That's the way that it works, and that's what's going on right here. Now, isn't to say that everything's completely perfect under his reign. Verse 4, we find this exception yet again. We're going to for just a couple more kings, and finally someone's going to clean up this mess in Judah. Except that the high places were not removed, the people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. So everything's going great. He listens to God. He follows God. There's this beautiful prophetic, perhaps priestly voice in his ear by the name of Zechariah who's guiding him, and he says, yes, Zechariah, you're right. I'm going to do that. And he does this all the days of Zechariah. We've seen this before, but there's an implication. What do you think happens when Zechariah is not there to put this lovely advice into his ear? Verse 5, then the Lord struck the king so that he was a leper until the day of his death. So he dwelt in an isolated house, and Jotham, the king's son, was over the royal house, judging the people of the land. So he becomes a leper, and he wastes away with this disease for many years. Time frame wise, it's believed this is about 750 BC, and if that's accurate, you're looking at right about maybe a little over a decade that he suffers with this dreadful terminal disease until he just finally wastes away. But while he's dwelling in his own isolated house, his son Jotham has to essentially assume the throne and judge, and so what we find is another co-regency that's taking place here. So Jotham, his son, intervenes and helps out during this time period, probably of give or take a little bit around a decade. So turn back to 2 Chronicles chapter 26, because in 2 Kings we're not told anything about this. It's just, hey, things are going great, economy's booming, military's having a lot of success, the borders are expanding, and all of a sudden God strikes him. You wonder, well, why? He was so good. He was doing a lot of nice things. Chronicles, 2 Chronicles chapter 26 gives us more information. We'll pick up where we left off in verse number 16. But when he was strong, he grew proud to his destruction. I left you with a verse that you know very well from Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18. Pride goes before what? A fall, and a haughty spirit before, destruction, or vice versa. So pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. He's blessed, and things are going great, and so he gets to telling himself, and maybe he's listening to advisors like previous regimes, that it's all because of you. Oh, King, you're so smart, good looking. Has anyone told you that lately? You're a good looking guy. Okay, yeah, you're probably right. And what else? They keep bragging on him. And yeah, I have done this because of how great I am. He starts thinking he's strong, so he grows proud. I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it. As frustrating as it is to have to deal with failure, I actually think it may be easier to deal with failure than it is with success. You'll find teams in sports that are trash, the bottom of the league, mine being a prime example. We were 2-14 the year prior when Big Red, the Kool-Aid guy, took over in Kansas City. And the next year, we started the year 9-0 after going 2-14. And it took a few years, but won a Super Bowl. Start winning more Super Bowls. But you know how it is. Whatever sports it is, it's difficult to maintain success. It's so rare for a team to win multiple championships, even though a lot of times the talent the next year is the same or maybe even greater than what it was before. The human mind just has difficulty in handling success the right way. There are 3 temptations. We know about the desires of our body, the desires of our eyes. Sometimes we forget about the pride or the vain glory of this life that brings us down. This guy starts drinking the Kool-Aid. He grows proud to his own destruction. Verse 16, for he was unfaithful to the Lord his God and entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. He thinks he can do anything he wants. He's acting as a priest. But Azariah, the priest, went in after him with 80 priests of the Lord who were men of valor themselves. And they withstood King Uzziah. So they used their strength to say, oh, no. You have no right, king, to do that. God doesn't allow it. You know this. And said to him, it is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Now you think about this. Isn't this the way it always works? I was talking about sports earlier. All professional athletes, not all, but many professional athletes, they just have to be rappers. And rappers, they just have to be professional athletes. It's one of those kinds of things that this guy is the ruler over the entire nation, has had booming success, gets to be in place for half a century, and it's not enough for him. Yeah, but he doesn't get to burn incense like the priests do. Don't you know that some of the priests would think, man, if I could be ruler of the country, wouldn't that be awesome? Why is it that we're often not appreciative of the role that God has given us? We always want more, especially when we experience success. So with their strength, they let him know, you can't do this. Go out of the sanctuary, for you have done wrong, and it will bring you no honor from the Lord God. Then Uzziah was angry. Now he had a censer in his hand to burn incense, and when he became angry with the priest, leprosy broke out on his forehead in the presence of the priest in the house of the Lord by the altar of incense. And Azariah, the chief priest, and all the priests looked at him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead. And they rushed him out quickly, and he himself hurried to go out because the Lord had struck him. And King Uzziah was a leper to the day of his death, and being a leper, lived in a separate house. For he was excluded from the house of the Lord. I think this is probably a strategic punishment that God places on him. And we're reminded of it right here. If you're a leper, what do you not get to do among God's people? You don't get to go into God's house, or be among God's people, right? Part of which is you don't get to go into God's house with his people to worship him. This guy has abused his privilege, going inside of God's house and trying to do what is not his role to do. And so God gives him a disease whereby for the rest of his life he will never again get to step foot with God's people in God's house. We're told that the Lord had struck him, of course. King Uzziah was a leper till the day of his death. He had to live in a separate house. He was excluded from the house of the Lord. And that's when and why Jotham, his son, was over the king's household, governing the people or serving as a king. It's a co-regent, so he's not a sovereign king just yet. He'll get there. Governing the people of the land. Now, the rest of the acts of Uzziah, from first to last, Isaiah, the prophet, the son of Amos, wrote. And so isn't this pretty cool? The biblical cross-references. Many times we'll read in the Kings. But you can find the rest of the story in the Chronicles. We've also read in the Chronicles. If you want to know more, check back with the Kings. Here we find out Isaiah, the prophet of God. You know him. He has a writing. Go look in it. You can find out more about that. So the Bible helps us to know what are inspired books and what we should recognize as being sent from the Lord. And Uzziah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the burial field that belonged to the kings, for they said, he is a leper. And Jotham, his son, reigned in his place. So I know that's a lot from the Chronicles, but again, none of this is found in the Kings, and it's so fascinating. So I appreciate your being patient with me and our taking the time to find out more about that. Okay, so one other thing that I will point out right here. He's a leper till the day of his death, verse 5 in our main text that we're using, 2 Kings 15. The reason for that is his disobedience to the Lord, his trying to change the priesthood. By the way, does that sound familiar at all? Right now, we're told that he becomes king when a guy in the north, his name is Jeroboam II. When Jeroboam I becomes the opening king of the divided period in the north, what's one of the earliest things he does? Changes the whole system of worship, including tries to change the priesthood. And the curse of God is found upon him. This guy knows better. He understands the history of God's people. He knows the mistakes of the past. He hasn't learned from them, and so this is his sentence for the rest of his life. Again, this is believed to take place about 750 BC. Verse 6 of 2 Kings 15. Now the rest of the acts of Azariah, that's Uzziah, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles? See, as we often find to be the case, the inspired cross-references of the kings of Judah. So Azariah rested with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. Then Jotham his son reigned in his place. So that gives us some more insight as to what's been taking place in Judah. It is time for us to jump ship and to make up some ground in the land of Israel now, as we frequently do. Speaking of Israel, Israel's had a real problem. What's the nation? And I'm going to give you a strong hint here. Don't let the screen confuse you right now. What's the nation that's been the thorn in Israel's side for some time before we've gotten this brief period of respite? Syria. Good. Not Syria, right? That's a different one. That is a different one. So Syria, the capital there is Damascus. And for Assyria, whether capital or not, principal city for sure of Nineveh. You also have Ashur and the others that you see on the map. So this has been a growing world superpower in the meantime. And Assyria is about to tango with God's people. Syria has been for some time different people, though. Assyria. And on the map, Syria, Syria is going to be a little bit more like down here. And so you have to go up to the northeast a decent amount to find what is going to become, I guess you could probably call it the empire of Assyria. Okay, so that's in verse 8. Verse 8, where Israel is going to begin her submission to these people. Zechariah, but in the 38th year of Azariah, king of Judah, and so we can date that to be 753 BC, 753 BC. Azariah, king of Judah, Zechariah, the son of Jeroboam, reigned over Israel in Samaria for 6 months. I'm going to show you a chart, and you've seen this one before. This is the Jehuian dynasty, and it starts with Jehu, who does a lot of good things for God. He eradicates the family of Ahab. He destroys the worship of Baal, and this is in the north, don't forget, not in the south. There are no good, completely good kings in the north. There are roughly 8, it would seem, in the south. But Jehu, he does a lot of good things, and God gives him his flowers for that. He says, hey, I appreciate what you've done against the household of Ahab. That's what I've been wanting to do. And what you do to get rid of Baal, obviously God wants that. But look at the years of reign. We're looking at 27, maybe 28-ish. For Jehoahaz, you have about 16 years. Jehoash or Joash, and that's not the same one who's already reigned in Judah, but a new one. They actually have just a little bit of overlap at the same time. 16 years. Jeroboam II, he has some military power, does actually, under the divided period, really reaches, Israel does the zenith of her power with Jeroboam II. And so he reigns 29, 30 years. And then Zechariah, the year 753, and it's only a sliver. What kind of a king do you think he was? 6 months. Yeah, he wasn't the best the world's seen, that's for sure. He reigned 6 months over Israel. Verse 9. You could probably guess. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, as his fathers had done. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who had made Israel sin. Then Shallum, the son of Jabesh, conspired against him. Oh, what an ugly word. There are many conspiracies through this history of Israel. And struck and killed him in front of the people. What an embarrassment. And he reigned in his place. Now the rest of the acts of Zechariah, indeed, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. This was the word of the Lord, which he spoke to Jehu, saying, your son shall sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. And so it was. I know there's that little snippet that's found at the bottom of the screen on this chart, but I ask you to turn back to 2 Kings 10, please. 2 Kings 10, I want to get a more expansive view of this. Verse 28 of 2 Kings 10, thus Jehu wiped out Baal from Israel. But Jehu did not turn aside from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. That is, the golden calves that were in Bethel in the south and in Dan in the north. And the Lord said to Jehu, because you have done well in carrying out what is right in my eyes, according to the house of Ahab, according to all that was in my heart, your sons of the 4th generation shall sit on the throne of Israel. And that's really saying something in Israel, because these dynasties do not last for very long. Of course, you can go back to the first king over united Israel, Saul. There is no dynasty. He only serves all by his lonesome. So this is a real privilege back in that time, especially for a history of bad kings, to say, hey, you're going to have 4 of your kids, or descendants anyway, to sit on the throne. How sad it is, verse 31, however, that Jehu was not careful to walk in the law of the Lord, the God of Israel, with all his heart. He did not turn from the sins of Jeroboam, which he made Israel to sin. He's not very consistent. He agrees with God. He's on his side. Hey, we need to get rid of the Ahab and Jezebel family. Successful in that. Hey, we need to get rid of Baal. This is awful. Not good for our country. 100% right about that. We've got to keep around, though, the golden calf worship. I mean, that's part of our national heritage here. Well, he's off about that. And so he's not a great man and a true servant of God. But at the same time, he did a lot of good things. And God says, I appreciate what you have done, the good, and I will reward you for that. I'll give you 4 descendants to sit on the throne. And the final one, Zechariah, is a little more of a technicality. God fulfilled his word, but he's not going to sit on the throne. He didn't say for how long, each one. And because of how wicked he is, he only lets him sit on the throne for 6 months. Verse 13 of 2 Kings 15. Shallum, the son of Jabesh, became king in the 39th year of Uzziah. So if you're keeping track, that'll be 752 BC. He becomes king the 39th year of Uzziah, king of Judah. And he reigned a full month in Samaria. So if you're thinking, man, what an embarrassment and how awful you're king, and then you're removed and killed in front of the people after only 6 months. Doesn't get any worse than that. Well, with Shallum it does. How long does he reign? About 30 days. That is terrible, isn't it? But that's how bad the conditions are getting in Israel. And God's like, listen, I'm not putting up with you people any longer. And so you see the wrath of the Lord that's pending, and it's being shown time and again against the rulers. He reigned a whole month in Samaria. For Menahem, the son of Gadi, went up from Tirzah, came to Samaria, and struck Shallum, the son of Jabesh, in Samaria, and killed him, and he reigned in his place. Now the rest of the acts of Shallum and the conspiracy, there's that nasty word, which he led, indeed, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. Then from Tirzah, Menahem attacked Tifsah, all who were there in his territory, because they did not surrender. Therefore he attacked it. All the women there who were with child, he ripped open. Now, can you imagine, not just to take over, this is like of your own people, right? But not just to take over a place and say, you will, as essentially what you are is a treasonous tyrant, first of all. And secondly, you will bow before me. No, we won't. And all the women who are carrying children, to kill them and to cut them open, their children also within the womb. Verse 17, in the 39th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Menahem, the son of Gadi, became king over Israel, and he reigned 10 years in Samaria. How would you like this guy being your king for a full decade? That's more than two presidential terms. That takes place from 752 to 742 BC. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart all his days from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who had made Israel sin. Pul, king of Assyria, came against the land. Out of curiosity, do you have another name for this guy in your Bible? It's probably that for all of them, maybe not. Okay, P-U-L, Pul, same. So this is, you might recognize this name from history, especially biblical history. This is Tiglath-Pileser. You ever heard of that one? Tiglath-Pileser. Okay, he is the great Assyrian conqueror. And he comes down from the northeast, travels southwest to the land of Israel. And Menahem, who remember is now our sitting king for a decade in Israel, gave Pul, or Tiglath-Pileser, 1,000 talents of silver, that his hand might be with him to strengthen his kingdom under his control. Now, we have no idea of knowing exactly what the value of that was back when, but a little closer to our time, you're looking at $2 million. That was unheard of back then. $2 million the king of Israel offers to this Assyrian conqueror Pul, that his hand might be with him to strengthen the kingdom under his control. He sees this guy with ridiculous power, and there's this constant turnover among the rulers of Israel, and he recognizes, look, I need some help and some extra protection. How about I pay you $2 million, and then you help defend me, and we'll essentially kind of become a vassal territory to you. Well, how's he going to pay for this, you think? Government always has the solutions to every difficult question. Verse 20, and Menahem exacted the money, or forced it out of the hand of Israel, from all the very wealthy. I'm going to guess the mantra might have been, it's time for these rich snobs to pay their fair share. And it's about $2,000 in our terms today. Who knows exactly what it was back then? Do you love Christmas season as an adult? I'm sidetracking a little bit here. You know, my favorite thing is when I get a lovely Christmas card from the local government that says, okay, and here's what you owe us now to own your land and to own your property. You know, isn't that so wonderful Christmas card? And, you know, for a lot of us, it's probably in this range, give or take, several thousands of dollars. That'll be our Christmas present. What do you think? We love you. Do you love us? Well, this is kind of like a Christmas present right here from the government. Oh, by the way, you owe us $2,000 each. And remember, you know, back then, standard of living is very different from what we have in our time today. You know, it would probably be like at least an equivalency 10, if not more like 100 times in cost of living, without having factored in for them what it would be for us. What do you think those citizens of Israel thought about this decision? The king makes this decision. He doesn't have the money to pay for it. He says, you can pay for it. And the king, first of all, has way more than what these people do anyway, I'm sure, even the wealthy. But he has the people pay for it so they can pay their fair share to give to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. Okay, I won't wipe you out, and yeah, I see you're friendly to me. I'll help you out in your reign, make sure that it's strengthened. Now the rest of the acts of Menahem and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Israel? So Menahem rested with his fathers, then Pekahiah, his son, Pekahiah, his son, reigned in his place. In the 50th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekahiah, the son of Menahem, became king over Israel and Samaria, and now we're back to that super short. He reigned only 2 years. That's from 742 to 740 BC. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who had made Israel sin. Then Pekah, the son of Remaliah, an officer of his, the bad word, conspired against him and killed him in Samaria. He'd made himself strong, but he wasn't strong enough. In the citadel of the king's house, along with Argob and Ariah, and with him were 50 men of Gilead. He killed them and reigned in his place. Now the rest of the acts of Pekahiah, and all that he did, indeed they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Israel. Guess what? We have a new king in Israel. Now remember when we were going back and forth. We need to talk about Israel, next ruler. Okay, now we need to talk about Judah. And what the Kings is doing is largely keeping a chronology fairly balanced between the two. But you go back and count, after we talked about Judah, Israel, because they're so wicked, the rulers aren't reigning for very long. We have to go through, at least 5, 6 Israelite kings before we can even get back to the timeline of the kings of Judah. That's how bad things are becoming up in the north. Verse 27, in the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah, that's the final one. So we're looking at Pekah now, the son of Remaliah, becoming king over Israel and Samaria, and he reigns for 20 years. Our timeline there is 751 to 732 BC. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who had made Israel sin. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came. Okay, that's another name. So just like with Azariah, Uzziah, same person in Judah, Here, Pul, P-U-L, and Tiglath-Pileser, same person, just a different name. Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and took Ijon, Abel-Beth, Maacah, Genoa, Kadesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried them captive to Assyria. Tiglath-Pileser reigns in Assyria from 745 to 727 BC, and he comes in and he defeats so much of the territory of Israel and carries away all these captives. Verse 30, then Hoshea, the son of Elah, led a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and struck and killed him. So he reigned in his place in the 20th year of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, and that takes place in 732 BC. Okay, I promised this to you, so with our few minutes we have remaining, I'm going to toss this up so you can see what it is to which I've been referring. This is a layout, and you can tell a number of these reigns overlap with one another. In the south, a lot of times you're dealing with sons helping to groom them, but sometimes there's, in the case of Israel, kind of a faction kingdom almost that sets up on the east side of the Jordan River that serves as a rival to what's going on in Israel. All kinds of mess, but also there's the co-regency. Sometimes it's not a mess and just fathers really caring about their country and their sons grooming them for reigns. Verse 31, now the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did, indeed they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. Let's finish the chapter now. Verse 32, in the second year, we're going back to Judah. Okay, so timeline-wise, we finally have caught up and gotten through all these terrible kings of Israel. In the second year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah, began to reign. That's in 750 BC. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. And so his reign is going to carry from 750 to 735 BC, 750 to 735. He did what, who wants to say this? Memory verse. Okay, John? Excellent. Thank you, sir. Okay, so good king, right? And he was like his dad, Uzziah. However, the high places were not removed, as we often find to be the case. The people still sacrificed and burned incense in the high places. Also, he built the upper gate of the house of the Lord. If we had more time, we'd look at the 2 Chronicles parallel, chapter 27, 2 and 3, where it's mentioned. He did according to all that his father Uzziah did, except he did not burn incense in the temple. Okay, that's good, right? He learned from dad. That's a mistake. Verse 36, now the rest of the acts of Jotham and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? In those days, the Lord began to send Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, against Judah. Okay, so what would that tell you about the faithfulness of Jotham? He's like his dad, Uzziah. Dad's reign starts out strongly and fades over time, and it appears probably this is what takes place with Jotham's reign also. So the time comes, verse 38, where Jotham's going to rest with his fathers, and he gets buried with his fathers in the city of David. His father, then Ahaz, his son, reigned in his place. When you hear the name Ahaz, does that remind you of any other name? Ahaz. Ooh, that sounds a lot like Ahab. I wish it only sounded like Ahab, because unfortunately his life is going to reflect Ahab's quite a bit too. But we'll deal with him when we get back together next week. I know that's a lot of reading and a lot of history, but also I like to do that because I don't want to get too bogged down in it, and it keeps us moving a little. But please, any other comments and reflections that you have, and so much reading and history that we did have this morning from chapter 15. Okay, for next week we have a shorter expanse. I like that. We can get a little more in depth. 20 verses. Read chapter 16, please. Chapter 16, and I'm going to have you, if you will, to memorize verse 3. Verse 3. What kind of a king was Ahaz? Not great. Verse 3 will tell you why. All right, thank you.